Imagine you're sitting in a classroom. The teacher writes a word on the board. Barcelona. Simple enough, right? Now imagine looking at that word and seeing it flip, spin, and rearrange itself into something unrecognizable. The letters won't stay still. They're dancing. And you're supposed to read this out loud in front of everyone. This isn't a magic trick. This isn't a nightmare. This is reality for millions of people around the world, every single day. Welcome to What Is, the show where we dive into the topics that shape our world. Today we're exploring one of the most misunderstood learning differences in existence, dyslexia. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's unravel this together. What exactly is dyslexia? Well, grab your dictionary. Unless you have dyslexia, in which case just keep watching. Dictionary.com defines dyslexia as a learning disorder characterized by difficulty reading, especially in relation to phonological processing. But that's the clinical version. Let me break it down in plain English. Dyslexia is a neurological condition that affects how the brain processes language. It's not about intelligence. It's not about laziness. It's not about seeing letters backwards, though we'll get to that myth later. It's about the brain's unique way of handling written and sometimes spoken language. Dyslexia is actually very common. Researchers estimate that it affects roughly 15 to 20% of the population. That's 1 in 5 people. If you have a classroom of 30 students, statistically, about 6 of them have dyslexia. In a stadium of 50,000 people, that's 10,000 people processing language differently than you might expect. And here's the thing, dyslexia doesn't discriminate. It affects men and women, boys and girls, across all ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. Though research suggests it may be slightly more common in boys, recent studies indicate that girls might simply be underdiagnosed because they often develop coping strategies that hide their struggles. History. Now let's take a little trip back in time. The term dyslexia was coined in 1887 by a German physician named Rudolf Berlin. He was treating a young boy who had difficulty learning to read and write, despite having normal intelligence and vision. Berlin used the Greek words dys, meaning difficult, and lexis, meaning word, and thus dyslexia was born. But here's what I find fascinating. Descriptions of reading difficulties have been documented throughout history, long before we had a name for them. In 1896, a British physician named W. Pringle Morgan described a condition he called congenital word blindness. Imagine being called word blind in the Victorian era. Not exactly the most progressive terminology, but hey, they were trying. For decades, dyslexia was poorly understood. Many people believed it was a sign of low intelligence or even moral failing. Children with dyslexia were often punished for being lazy or slow. It wasn't until the 1970s and 1980s that researchers began to understand the neurological basis of dyslexia, using brain imaging technology to see exactly what's happening inside the heads of people with this condition. And what did they find? Well, it turns out the brains of people with dyslexia are actually wired a little differently. More specifically, the left hemisphere of the brain, the side typically responsible for language processing, shows reduced activity in people with dyslexia. The brain works harder to accomplish the same tasks, compensating by using other brain regions. Pretty remarkable when you think about it. These brains are actually working overtime just to do what most people do automatically. Symptoms and signs. Now let's talk about what dyslexia actually looks like in real life, because here's the thing, it's not the same for everyone. Dyslexia exists on a spectrum, and symptoms can vary widely from person to person. Some common signs include difficulty decoding words, meaning breaking down unfamiliar words into smaller pieces. Poor spelling is another big one, and I don't mean occasional typos. I mean consistently spelling words wrong, even after you've just written them correctly 2 lines above. Reversing letters like B and D, or P and Q, is common, though this is more typical in younger children and often evens out with age. Reading slowly and painfully is another telltale sign. People with dyslexia often read at a significantly lower level than their peers, not because they can't understand the material, but because decoding each word takes so much effort. And here's one that often gets overlooked: difficulty with oral language. Some people with dyslexia struggle to find the right word, or they might mispronounce words they know. They might also have trouble remembering sequences, like the months of the year, days of the week, or even phone numbers. Many people with dyslexia also have remarkable strengths. They're often creative thinkers, excellent problem solvers, and have exceptional spatial reasoning. Many are out-of-the-box thinkers who see connections others miss. More on that later. Causes. So what causes dyslexia? The short answer is, we know it's hereditary to a large degree. If you have a parent or sibling with dyslexia, you're significantly more likely to have it too. Studies suggest that genetics play a role in somewhere between 40 and 60% of cases. We haven't identified a single dyslexia gene. Instead, researchers believe multiple genes are involved, each contributing a small effect. It's not like eye color where you get one gene from mom and one from dad. It's more like height, a complex interplay of many different genetic factors. Beyond genetics, there are also prenatal and perinatal risk factors. Things like premature birth, low birth weight, and exposure to alcohol or drugs during pregnancy have all been linked to an increased risk of dyslexia. The actual neurological mechanism involves something called phonological processing. That's a fancy term for the ability to manipulate sounds in language. When you read, your brain needs to connect letters to their sounds, then blend those sounds into words. For people with dyslexia, this process is inefficient. The brain has to work much harder to make these connections. Think of it like a traffic jam in your brain. The information is trying to get through, but the pathways are congested. The cars, that's the language information, eventually arrive at their destination, but it takes longer and requires more effort. Alright, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Before we continue, if you're finding this information helpful, hit that like button and consider subscribing to What Is. We explore all kinds of fascinating topics just like this one. Next, we will look at types of dyslexia. Now here's something that might surprise you. There isn't just one type of dyslexia. Researchers and educators have identified several different subtypes, each with its own characteristics. Primary dyslexia is the most common type. It's neurological in origin and tends to run in families. This type affects the brain's ability to process phonemes, the individual sound units in language. People with primary dyslexia struggle most with decoding and spelling. Secondary or developmental dyslexia is believed to be caused by slight differences in brain development during the early stages of pregnancy. This type often improves with intervention and may diminish as children get older. Trauma dyslexia, as you might expect, occurs after brain injury or trauma to the area of the brain that controls reading and writing. This is actually quite rare and differs from the developmental forms of dyslexia we typically talk about. There's also something called dysgraphia, which specifically affects writing ability, and dyscalculia, which affects math skills. These are related but distinct conditions, though they often co-occur with dyslexia. Some researchers now talk about visual dyslexia, or surface dyslexia, which involves difficulties with whole word recognition. These individuals can sound out words perfectly well, but struggle to recognize common words instantly, like the or was. The important thing to remember is that everyone's experience with dyslexia is unique. Two people with dyslexia might have completely different strengths and challenges. It's not a one-size-fits-all condition. Diagnosis. So how do you know if you or someone you know has dyslexia? The formal diagnosis process typically involves a comprehensive evaluation conducted by a psychologist, educational specialist, or neuropsychologist. This evaluation usually includes tests of reading ability, spelling, phonemic awareness, and sometimes IQ tests to rule out other potential causes of learning difficulties. The goal is to determine if the person's reading difficulties are significant enough to qualify as dyslexia, and to identify their specific pattern of strengths and challenges. But here's the thing, not everyone gets formally diagnosed. Many people, especially adults, have lived their whole lives without knowing they have dyslexia. They just thought they were bad at reading, or slow learners. If you suspect you might have dyslexia, it's never too late to seek an evaluation. Understanding your own brain can be incredibly empowering. For children, early identification is crucial. The sooner dyslexia is identified, the earlier intervention can begin, and early intervention is remarkably effective. Treatment and support. Now for the million-dollar question, is there a cure for dyslexia? The simple answer is no, not in the traditional sense. Dyslexia is a lifelong condition, but here's the beautiful part. It can be managed, and with the right support, people with dyslexia can become highly successful readers and writers. The most effective interventions are typically multisensory, meaning they engage multiple senses at once: sight, sound, and touch. Programs like Orton Gillingham, Wilson, and Barton have strong evidence bases and are widely used in schools and tutoring centers. These programs focus on explicitly teaching the relationship between letters and sounds. They break down reading into its component parts, building skills systematically from the ground up. And they use multiple modalities. Students might see a letter, say its sound, and write it simultaneously. Accommodations are also incredibly important. In schools, this might include extra time on tests, permission to use audiobooks, or being allowed to give oral presentations instead of written ones. In the workplace, accommodations might include text-to-speech software, flexible deadlines, or modified responsibilities. Technology has been a game changer for people with dyslexia. There are now countless apps and tools that can help with reading, writing, and organization. Text-to-speech and speech-to-text software, dyslexia-friendly fonts, and audiobooks have opened doors that were previously closed. But perhaps the most important support? Attitude. The way we talk about dyslexia matters. When parents, teachers, and peers believe in the potential of people with dyslexia, outcomes improve dramatically. Encouragement and patience go further than any app or program. Famous people with dyslexia. Let's talk about some incredibly successful people who have dyslexia. Because if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that dyslexia is not a limitation. It's a different way of processing the world. Let's start with some household names. Leonardo da Vinci, the Renaissance genius who painted the Mona Lisa. Many historians believe he had dyslexia. Albert Einstein, also thought to have had dyslexia. He didn't speak until he was 4 and was considered a poor student, but we all know how that turned out. In more modern times, we have Richard Branson, the billionaire founder of Virgin Group. He's been very open about his dyslexia and has said that it actually helped him succeed as an entrepreneur because he learned to delegate and trust his team. Actor and filmmaker Whoopi Goldberg has dyslexia. So does comedian and talk show host Jay Leno. Former Disney CEO Michael Eisner has talked about his struggles with dyslexia. And perhaps most surprisingly, rapper and entrepreneur Jay-Z has dyslexia and has said he avoided reading for years because of it. What do all these people have in common? They didn't let dyslexia define them or limit them. They found their strengths, worked around their challenges, and achieved extraordinary things. In fact, many people with dyslexia report having what they call dyslexic advantages. These can include exceptional creativity, strong visual thinking, out-of-the-box problem solving, and the ability to see the big picture when others get bogged down in details. Myths versus facts. Now let's address some of the most common myths about dyslexia, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Myth number 1. People with dyslexia see letters backwards. While some children do reverse letters temporarily, this is not a defining characteristic of dyslexia. Most people with dyslexia see letters just fine. The issue is with processing and connecting sounds to letters, not with visual perception. Myth number 2. Dyslexia is a sign of low intelligence. Absolutely not true. As we've discussed, many incredibly intelligent and successful people have dyslexia. In fact, with proper support, people with dyslexia can achieve at the highest levels. Myth number 3, dyslexia can be cured. Sorry, but it's a lifelong condition. However, with appropriate intervention and support, the symptoms can be managed effectively, and many people learn to read and write quite well. Myth number 4, only boys have dyslexia. False. While some studies suggested this was true, more recent research indicates that girls are simply underdiagnosed. Boys might be more likely to be identified because they often exhibit behavioral problems when they struggle in school, while girls tend to internalize their difficulties. Myth number 5, people with dyslexia can't learn to read. Completely false. With the right approach and support, virtually everyone with dyslexia can learn to read. It might take more time and effort, but it's absolutely possible. Living with dyslexia. Let's talk about what it's actually like to live with dyslexia, because the numbers and definitions are important, but the human experience is what matters most. Imagine being a child who loves stories, who loves being read to, who has a fantastic imagination, but who dreads reading aloud in class. Imagine the anxiety of a spelling test when you know you've studied, but the words just won't stay in your head. Imagine the embarrassment of reading a menu at a restaurant and mispronouncing something in front of your friends. For many people with dyslexia, these experiences shape their childhoods. The frustration and shame can be profound, but so can the resilience and strength that develop as a result. One thing that often gets overlooked is the emotional toll of undiagnosed or unsupported dyslexia. When you grow up being told you're lazy or stupid, when you work harder than everyone else but still fall behind, it takes a toll on self-esteem. Many adults with undiagnosed dyslexia struggle with anxiety or depression, rooted in years of feeling inadequate. That's why awareness matters. That's why understanding matters. When teachers, parents, employers, and peers understand dyslexia, they can offer the right kind of support. They can focus on strengths rather than constantly fixing weaknesses. They can celebrate progress rather than comparing to arbitrary standards. If you have dyslexia, or if you know someone who does, I want you to hear this. Your worth is not measured by your reading speed. Your potential is not limited by your labels. You have unique gifts to offer the world, and dyslexia is just one part of who you are. Support strategies. Let's finish up with some practical strategies that can help people with dyslexia succeed. First, embrace multisensory learning. Find ways to engage multiple senses when learning to read and write. Say words out loud while writing them. Use colored overlays or special fonts that reduce visual stress. Listen to audiobooks while following along with the text. Second, build on strengths. If someone with dyslexia is great at art, use that. If they're a whiz at building things, connect reading to those interests. When learning is relevant and engaging, it sticks better. Third, practice, practice, practice. But make it fun. Reading should not be a punishment. Find books on topics the person genuinely cares about. Graphic novels, magazines, comics, these all count and can help build reading fluency without the torture of boring assignments. Fourth, use technology. There's an app for almost everything now. Text-to-speech can help with reading comprehension. Speech-to-text can help with writing. Spell checkers and grammar assistants can catch errors. Don't fight the technology, embrace it. Fifth, advocate. If you're a parent, make sure your child's school is providing appropriate support. If you're an adult, advocate for accommodations in the workplace. You know your brain better than anyone. Don't be afraid to speak up. And finally, connect with others. There are communities of people with dyslexia everywhere, online and in person. Sometimes the most helpful thing is talking to someone who truly understands what you're going through. And there you have it, Dyslexia Explained. We covered what it is, its history, the different types, how it's diagnosed, and how to manage it. We debunked some myths and celebrated some successes. And I hope, more than anything, that you now have a better understanding of what it means to have a brain that processes language a little differently. If you took away one thing from this video, I hope it's this. Dyslexia is not a deficit, it's a difference. And in a world that needs all kinds of minds, the dyslexic mind is a valuable one. If you found this video informative and engaging, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to What Is. If you haven't already, we've got lots more fascinating topics coming up. And if you know someone who might benefit from this information, share it with them. Knowledge is power, and understanding is the first step toward compassion. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bonus fact. Did you know that the word dyslexia itself was almost alexia? The prefix a in Greek means without, while dys means difficult. Some early researchers thought alexia, meaning without words, was more accurate. But Rudolf Berlin, who coined the term, went with dyslexia because he felt it better captured the nuance that people with this condition aren't without language, but rather have difficulty with it. And just like that, a small Greek prefix decision shaped the terminology for generations. See you next time.